The dawn came slow over the dry plains, spilling golden light across the horizon like a soft fire crawling over the earth. The wind whispered through the tall grass and carried the scent of dust. Horses in distance. Jed Carter, a widowed cowboy with shoulders bowed under years of silence, tightened the rope on his horse's saddle and prepared for another quiet day. He didn't know that this morning would break the walls around his heart forever. His little daughter, Emma, 5 years old and full of wonder, ran down the porch with her hair flying like a banner. "Papa, can I ride with you today?" she asked, clutching her small hat against the wind. Jed smiled faintly. "Not too far, Pumpkin. Just to the creek and back." She grinned, climbed onto his saddle, and they rode through the morning light. Two lonely souls bound by blood, grief, and the silence of loss. It had been 3 years since Jed buried his wife, Mary. Her laughter had once filled their small wooden house. Her soft singing used to echo through the fields at dusk. When she died, giving birth to Emma, Jed had turned into a shadow of himself. He worked, he prayed, and he raised his daughter, but his eyes never smiled again. The townfolks whispered that Jed Carter was the kind of man who carried ghosts in his chest. And in truth, he did. But that morning, fate had decided it was time to wake his sleeping heart. They reached the old oak tree near the fence line, where autumn leaves fell like rain. The horse slowed, and Emma suddenly pointed ahead. "Papa, what's that?" Jed followed her gaze and froze. There, under the massive oak, lay a burlap sack. Something or someone inside it moved faintly. A low moan rose from the ground. Jed dismounted instantly, his instincts sharp as a knife. "Stay here, Em," he ordered, voice rough. But Emma had already slid off, tiny boots crunching on the dirt as she ran toward the figure. When Jed reached the sack, he knelt, heart pounding. The shape inside was human. He ripped the coarse fabric open and gasped. Inside lay a young woman, pale and trembling, her wrists bruised and bound with rope. Her dress was torn, her lips cracked from thirst. She looked up at him with eyes that were both terrified and pleading. "Please don't leave me," she whispered weakly. Jed's chest tightened. Emma knelt beside her, tears welling in her big brown eyes. "Papa, she's hurt." "Who did this?" Jed didn't answer. He could see the marks of cruelty. This woman had been thrown away like an animal. He lifted her gently, feeling how light she was, like a handful of broken wings. "Easy now," he murmured, carrying her to the horse. The woman fainted, her head resting against his arm. Emma followed silently, holding onto his sleeve. "Papa," she whispered again, trembling. "Why would someone do that?" Jed swallowed hard. "Because not everyone's got a heart like yours." "Baby." He laid the woman across the saddle, mounted up and rode back to the ranch, wind biting his face and anger, burning in his veins. When they reached home, Jed laid her on the bed once used by Mary. He called for Doc Hill from the town. The doctor came fast, examined her, and shook his head. "She's lucky you found her. Another hour and she'd be gone. Looks like someone beat her, tied her, and left her to die." Jed clenched his fists. "Who would do such a thing?" The doctor sighed. "I've seen too much evil in this world. Jed, sometimes cruelty doesn't need a reason." For days, the woman hovered between life and death. Emma stayed by her side, bringing water, wiping her forehead, humming little tunes. Jed watched from the doorway, his heart aching at the sight. Slowly, the woman opened her eyes and looked at him. "Where am I?" she asked faintly. "At my ranch," Jed said. "You're safe now." She stared at him, like she didn't believe safety existed anymore. "Who are you?" "Jed Carter. This here's my daughter, Emma." Emma smiled shyly. "Hi. You were sleeping a long time." The woman's lips quivered. I thought I was dead." "You're not," Jed said quietly. "Not anymore." Over the next few days, the woman, whose name they learned was Clara, began to heal. She spoke little, her voice soft like rain. Her eyes filled with pain she couldn't yet tell. She'd been working as a maid in town, she finally confessed, for a family that treated her worse than dirt. When she refused the advances of the master, they beat her, tied her in a sack, and dumped her outside the town to die. Emma cried when she heard it. Jed's jaw tightened like stone. "No one deserves that," he said. Clara looked at him with gratitude and fear. "Why did you save me?" she asked. Jed looked at her for a long moment. "Because my daughter wouldn't forgive me if I didn't." Emma adored Clara. She followed her everywhere, helped her cook, brushed her hair, made her laugh again. For the first time since Mary's death, laughter returned to the Carter home. Jed found himself watching Clara as she worked. Her gentle hands, her quiet strength. Something warm stirred inside him, something he thought was buried forever. But he pushed it down. He'd lost once before. He wasn't ready to lose again. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Jed found Emma sitting on the porch steps, clutching a small flower. "Papa," she said softly, "Clara makes me feel like Mama's back." Jed's heart skipped a beat. "Don't say that, Pumpkin." "But it's true," she insisted. "She talks like Mama, sings like her, and when she hugs me, it feels the same." Jed had no words. He looked toward the house where Clara stood at the window, the golden light falling on her face. Something inside him whispered that maybe, just maybe, God was giving him a second chance. But peace never lasts long on the plains. That night, a group of riders appeared at the ranch, 3 men with cruel eyes and whiskey on their breath. Jed stepped out with his shotgun. "What do you want?" he barked. The leader smirked. "We're here for the girl. She's ours. Ran off with my boss's silver and a bad attitude." Jed's jaw hardened. "She's under my roof. You ain't touching her." The man spat on the ground. "You sure about that, Cowboy?" Before Jed could reply, Emma ran out, clutching Clara's hand. The sight of the little girl made the men pause. "Go back inside, Em!" Jed shouted, keeping the shotgun raised. The men sneered. "You think you can hide her? She's a thief and a liar." Jed's eyes burned. "She's a woman who's been hurt enough. Now ride away before I forget I'm a God-fearing man." There was a long silence. Then, slowly, the riders turned their horses and disappeared into the dark. Clara collapsed to her knees, trembling. Jed went to her, gently helping her up. "You're safe," he whispered. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Why did you risk yourself for me?" Jed looked at Emma, who stood watching, eyes full of faith. "Because she said you were family." Clara's breath hitched. "Family?" "That's what she believes," Jed said. "And I think she's right." That night, as the fire crackled in the hearth, Emma crawled into her father's lap. "Papa," she whispered, "can we keep her?" Jed chuckled softly. "She's not a puppy, Em." "But she's Mama," Emma said simply, resting her head on his chest. Jed froze. Clara, sitting by the fire, looked up, eyes wide, lips trembling. The silence stretched long and soft. Then, for the first time in years, Jed smiled. A real gentle smile. "Maybe she is," he murmured. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying away the ghosts of the past. Inside, under the flickering firelight, a broken man, a wounded woman, and a little girl began to stitch their hearts back together, thread by thread. And as the night deepened, Jed Carter knew one thing for sure. Sometimes, miracles come wrapped not in light, but in burlap and pain. The winter winds came early that year. The prairie turned pale and quiet under gray skies, and the Carter Ranch seemed to breathe slower, as if the land itself were resting after years of pain. Clara had been with them for 3 months now, and each day she seemed to belong a little more. She tended to the horses, baked bread with Emma, and mended the fences beside Jed, who had stopped counting the days since she arrived. The air between them had changed, not loud, not hurried, but steady, like the rhythm of 2 hearts that finally understood each other's silence. Jed had noticed things he didn't before, the way Clara hummed while washing clothes, how she always saved the last piece of cornbread for Emma, how she looked at the horizon every evening like she was thanking the sky for another day alive. Sometimes he'd catch her staring at him too, eyes soft, unsure whether to trust what she was feeling. Jed didn't push. He knew healing couldn't be rushed, and love that's forced isn't love at all. But even peace has a shadow. And theirs came riding out of the past one cold afternoon. Jed was out mending a gate when he saw dust rising on the far trail, 4 riders heading straight for the ranch. He felt the old ache in his chest tighten. Something told him this wasn't good. He called out to Clara, who was feeding the hens. "Get inside, take Emma." She froze, her face turning pale. Is it them? Jed didn't answer. He didn't need to. She knew. The riders stopped at the fence. The leader, the same cruel-eyed man from before, dismounted, smirking. You should have stayed out of this, Carter, he drawled. Boss ain't happy you're keeping his property. Jed's voice was low and cold. She's no one's property. The man laughed. That girl cost him silver and pride. He don't let debts walk free. Inside the house, Clara clutched Emma tightly. Mama, why are they here? The little girl whispered. Clara's breath hitched. That word, Mama, still startled her every time. She looked into Emma's eyes and felt something fierce awaken in her. Because bad men don't like when good folks stand up, she said softly. Jed stepped forward, rifle steady in his hands. You've got two choices. Leave now, or I'll bury you where you stand. The man smirked. You won't shoot in front of your kid. Jed's jaw set. Try me. For a long, tense moment, no one moved. Then one of the men twitched toward his gun, and Jed fired. The shot cracked the silence, sending birds screaming into the sky. The man dropped, clutching his shoulder. The others panicked and fled. The leader cursed, mounting his horse. This ain't over, Carter. We'll be back, he shouted, disappearing into the hills. Jed stood breathing hard, rifle smoking. Clara ran out, Emma clinging to her skirts. Papa! The little girl cried, throwing herself into his arms. Jed held her tight, his heart pounding. Clara's eyes filled with tears. You shouldn't have risked yourself for me, she whispered. Jed looked at her, his voice rough. I already lost one woman to death. I ain't losing another. That night they barred the doors and sat by the fire, listening to the wind howl. Jed cleaned his rifle while Clara rocked Emma to sleep. When the little girl drifted off, Clara turned to him. They won't stop, Jed. He'll come himself next time. Jed nodded grimly. Then I'll be ready. She hesitated, then reached out, touching his hand. You shouldn't have to fight my past. Jed looked at her, eyes steady. It stopped being your past the day my daughter called you Mama. Tears spilled silently down Clara's face. You don't know what that word means to me, she whispered. Jed's voice softened. I think I do. Days passed, filled with tension. Jed set traps along the fence, kept his rifle near the door. Clara tried to go about her chores, but her hands trembled when she heard horses in the distance. Emma, sensing the fear, stayed close to both of them. But one thing had changed forever. The Carter house was no longer silent. Every evening, Clara sang softly to Emma, and Jed would sit by the fire, eyes closed, listening to the kind of peace he thought he'd never know again. Then one evening, as twilight bled across the sky, the storm returned. 5 riders thundered toward the ranch, their torches blazing. Jed saw them coming and shouted, Clara, take Emma to the cellar! But Clara shook her head. Not this time. I'm done running. She grabbed the shotgun and stood beside him. The men surrounded the porch. The leader dismounted. The same one who'd called her property. His voice dripped venom. You should have stayed dead, girl. Clara's eyes blazed. You should have learned mercy, he sneered. You're coming back with me. Jed stepped between them. Over my dead body. The man laughed darkly. That can be arranged. He raised his pistol, but Clara was faster. Her shotgun roared, the recoil slamming her back. The man fell, shock frozen on his face. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of flames from a dropped torch. The remaining riders fled, shouting curses into the night. Clara dropped the gun, hands shaking. Jed caught her before she fell. It's over, he whispered, holding her close. She trembled against him. I didn't mean to. You protected your family, he said firmly. That's all that matters. The fire from the torches spread quickly, licking the barn walls. Jed and Clara rushed to save the animals, releasing horses and throwing buckets of water. Emma helped, her small hands working desperately beside them. When the flames finally died, the barn was half gone, but the family was safe. They stood in the smoking ruins, covered in ash, hearts pounding, breathless but alive. Clara looked at Jed through tears. Why would God send me to die in a sack only to bring me here? Jed wiped a streak of soot from her face. Maybe because he knew this is where you were meant to be. In the days that followed, the town learned the truth. The sheriff arrested the men who'd hurt Clara, and their employer lost everything. Folks stopped whispering when she walked by. Some even came to thank Jed for standing up against cruelty. Clara, for the first time, began to hold her head high. One Sunday morning, as the church bell rang across the plains, Emma tugged her father's sleeve. "Papa, when will we be a real family?" she asked. Jed smiled faintly. "What do you mean, Pumpkin?" "You and Mama," she said confidently. Clara's eyes widened. "Emma." But the little girl went on. "God already made her my mama. He's just waiting for you to say it out loud." Jed looked at Clara, his throat tight. The sun caught her hair, turning it to gold. He took a slow breath, then knelt before Emma. "Maybe you're right," he said softly. He turned to Clara. "I can't promise a rich life or an easy one, but I can promise love, honest, quiet, and lasting." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "That's all I ever wanted." And there, under the open sky, with the wind carrying the scent of wildflowers and freedom, Jed Carter took her hand. Emma clapped her small hands together, laughing through tears. "I told you, Papa. She's Mama." The laughter that followed was warm and real, the kind that comes only after pain has done its work. The ranch was no longer haunted. It had become a home. Years later, when folks told the story of the cowboy, his daughter, and the woman in the sack, they always ended it the same way. Sometimes, the people you save end up saving you right back. And in the quiet of every evening, as the sun set over the Carter Ranch, Clara's voice could still be heard singing softly to her daughter. A song about faith, second chances, and the love that even death can't bury. If you felt this story touch your heart, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Every story deserves to reach someone who still believes in hope, love, and miracles.